Chuckles, there's something a little funny about the way people think. Not funny like, ha-ha. Funny like strange, because I've noticed something over the years. A person can have a perfectly good idea, something they really understand. They've thought about it, worked through it, maybe even struggled with it, and in the moment someone important walks into the room, they stop trusting it. Now, why does that happen? I mean, the idea doesn't suddenly change, right? It doesn't get worse because a professor showed up. It doesn't become less true because someone famous is listening. So what changed? You did. And that's already a very interesting problem, because it tells you something about how your mind works. That has nothing to do with truth and everything to do with people. Thoughtful. When I was a young student at Princeton, I found myself in a room with some very big names. And I don't mean famous in the newspaper sense. I mean the kind of people whose names were already in textbooks, the kind of people you don't expect to ever meet, let alone speak in front of. Albert Einstein was around, John von Neumann, a genius if there ever was one, and Wolfgang Pauli, well, he had a reputation. If your idea had a weakness, he'd find it, and not gently. So there I was, a kid really, standing at the blackboard, and I'm explaining something I'd worked on, something I understood. Not perfectly, but honestly. But my hand was shaking, not because the physics was hard, but because of the people in the room. Now that's very interesting, because the equations didn't care who was watching. They didn't get nervous. They didn't change their behavior. The truth didn't change. But I felt like it did. And that's when you begin to notice something important. People don't just think with logic, they think with permission. They want to know, is it okay to believe this? Is it okay to say this? Is it okay to be right here? And that's a very dangerous habit, because once you start waiting for permission to think, you're not really thinking anymore. You're just asking. You see it everywhere. In classrooms, someone has an answer, but they hesitate. In meetings, and someone has an idea, but they look around first. Even in conversations, people adjust what they say depending on who's listening. It's as if truth becomes negotiable, not based on evidence, but based on status. Now, here's the trick. Science, real science, doesn't work that way. It doesn't matter if it's me or Albert Einstein or anyone else. If an idea is right, it's right because it works. Not because somebody important nodded, not because it sounded impressive, not because everyone agreed, just because it works. But in practice, people forget that. They look around the room. They try to read faces. They try to guess what the smartest person is thinking, and then very quietly, they adjust their own thinking to match it. Now, that's not intelligence. That's social behavior, very human, but not very useful if you actually want to understand something deeply, because understanding requires something uncomfortable. It requires being willing to be wrong in front of other people. And most people don't like that. So instead, they aim for something safer. They aim to be approved of. But approval and truth are not the same thing. In fact, they often move in opposite directions. So here's something I learned, and it took me a while. If you're working on a problem, you should only say what you actually know, not what sounds impressive, not what makes you look smart, not what covers every possible angle, just what you can really defend. If you understand one small part, say that clearly, honestly. If there's something you don't understand, say that too. There's no shame in it. In fact, that's where the interesting stuff begins. Because once you admit what you don't know, you can actually start figuring it out. But the moment you pretend to know more than you do, you stop learning. And the moment you wait for someone else to approve your thinking, you stop trusting it. Now, I'm not saying ignore experts. That would be silly. Some people do know more than you. They've spent years thinking about something. Of course you should listen. But here's the key difference. You listen to them to learn, not to replace your thinking. There's a big difference between, let me understand why he thinks that, and well, he must be right. One leads to knowledge, the other leads to dependence. And dependence is comfortable. That's why people fall into it. You don't have to think as hard. You don't have to take responsibility. You don't have to risk being wrong. But you also don't get to discover anything real. So if you want a simple rule, something you can actually use, and it's this. Don't ask, who agrees with me? Ask, does this make sense? And I mean really make sense. Not just sound good, not just feel right, but actually hold up when you look closely. And if it does, even a little, then follow it. Test it. Work on it. Push it further. Even if nobody claps, even if nobody approves, even if the room is completely silent, because silence doesn't mean you're wrong. It often just means no one has caught up yet, because the actual work doesn't need permission. It never did. And once you really understand that, you stop waiting. And that's the whole game.